say that you do not frame your foreign policy on the basis of give and take, on the basis of returns, particularly material returns. Parsimony in terms of saving cost actually undermines credibility of your foreign policy. Foreign policy is about the greatness of a country, about the dignity of the people of the country. It's about the image of the country. Thereby, whoever frames the foreign policy of a country will first and foremost have the objective in his front, before him or before her, the credibility, the substance of that country, and not in terms of anticipating what to get from other countries. So framing foreign policy in Nigeria has been a process that has been a continuum from 1960, when Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, our first Prime Minister, enunciated the core fundamental principles of Nigeria's foreign policy. And at that time, they were predicated upon the objective realities of the world and of Africa. Decolonization, fighting apartheid, creating solidarity within the Commonwealth of Nations, reiterating the fundamental fact of the respect for territorial sovereignty, integrity, and non-aggression, and also respecting the borders of African countries, and dedication to the solidification of the concept of an African Union or Organization of African Unity. So the conditions changed. We fought apartheid, we ended it, we decolonized our continent, the Commonwealth is there. We did not go to war with any country since our independence. Even the Bakassi issue was settled within the confines of negotiation and adjudication by the International Court of Justice and under the auspices of late Kofi Annan, Secretary General of the United Nations, in the Green Tree process in New York. So we held true to those principles. What has changed are the nuances of foreign policy under different administration. General Murtala Mohammed's administration is fondly remembered in Africa with great nostalgia for its purposeful dedication to liberation of Africa. It was a radical foreign policy concept, very dynamic, very purposeful, and very focused. And it was backed by a selfless commitment and dedication of the resources of Nigeria to the liberation of African countries. The idea of Africa's fortune is to make or to be made by Africans still resonates with the generation that had witnessed the regime of General Murtala Mohammed. To the end of time, Africa will commend, respect, and remember General Murtala Mohammed for the posture his government took in liberating Africa, particularly in focusing the energy and attention of the world in the liberation of Angola and fighting the forces of apartheid South Africa that wanted to perpetuate domination and control of Angola and Namibia. Having said so, I refer to the nuances that were changing under different administration, and those we can clearly see them as watershed or landmarks in our foreign policy evolution and development. Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, whom you mentioned, came up with the idea of concert of medium powers. And at that time, it was a very noble, even now, it is a very good idea to have countries, sizable countries that carry some weight in their respective regions to form a coalition of countries to advance global diplomacy. So now the BRICS concept, for instance, is actually a modification of the concept of medium powers. Professor Ibrahim Gambari, when he was a minister, came up with the idea of concentric circles of foreign policy. General Ike Nwachukwu came up with the idea of economic diplomacy. Late Chief Ojomaduke came up with the idea of people's diplomacy. So you find that along the line, different ministries or ministers will conceive their own ideas about diplomacy, but without substantially changing the structure, principles, and foundations of Nigeria's foreign policy. I want to refer us to the Kuru Declaration, I think it was 1986, that reiterated the dynamic and radical posture of Nigeria's foreign policy. It did not emphasize the idea of reciprocity in terms of getting something for giving your support to Africa. It is implicit in the nature of the construction of Nigeria, its size and resources and population, that Nigeria should lead Africa without demanding for returns. It is a principle ingrained and conferred upon us by providence in terms of who we are, what we are. So to emphasize the idea that we must get something from Mali or from Central African Republic or Guinea-Bissau, I think it is to really denigrate our position in terms of advancing the interests of the continent. What do you expect to get from Guinea-Bissau? What will you expect to get from Mali? What you will expect is in terms of particularly their own solidarity, empathy, and support in situations where you call for it. Nigeria's return to the Security Council in short periods of time is unprecedented in Africa, and that is because of the respect we enjoy in the continent, that we frequently come back to the Security Council in the United Nations. And Nigeria, being the permanent member of the Peace and Security Council of the African Union, is a dignity that was conferred upon us by African countries in realization and in commendation of the position we have taken to lead Africa in terms of creating situations that will favor the enhancement of the dignity of the black man and the black woman. So I don't really attach myself so solidly to the idea that we don't have a foreign policy in 2020. Under President Muhammadu Buhari, foreign policy is either declarative, assertive, or is implicit. You do not have to come out to tell the whole world, list 8 or 10 programs to say, these are my foreign policy. You can do it in tandem in terms of the evolution of situations. If you look at from 2015 to today, 25 years, there is dynamism in terms of engagement at the level of the leadership of the country and other countries, whereby Mr. President, the Vice President, senior members of the National Assembly, ministers of foreign affairs and other ministers have been engaging with African leaders on the basis of resolution of conflicts, amelioration of situations, and addressing issues of regional and international concern. So we have a foreign policy, and it has been executed in very, very measured, not tentative, but measured and appreciable way, in an incremental way, to gather Africa around Nigeria. And I think, results are being, achieved, which we can now discuss, I think, along the line.
All right. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sarki. Professor Akintarewa, I know you would like to respond to the points that are on the table, particularly those issues articulated by your brother, Professor Ambassador Mbono and Ambassador Sarki. But take along with it this point that has also been espoused by some foreign policy analysts. What are the ends of foreign policy?
Thank you for giving me this golden opportunity. I think it is important to differentiate between tactical foreign policy and strategic foreign policy. As much as I want to agree, let me put it this way. Let me agree to disagree, first of all, with Ambassador Sarki. Agree essentially, Ambassador Mbonu, my sister, because when Ambassador Sarki is saying foreign policy is not meant, it's not a question of giving and taking. He's right, only to a very limited extent. Let's put the record straight, first of all. In the report that we were given in the beginning, I heard, and if I heard well, that Africa was centerpiece in 1960. That was not correct. What was correct was the use of the word cornerstone Africa was taken as the cornerstone of Nigeria's foreign policy in 1960. In 1976, Professor Adebayo Adedeji said that the conception of cornerstone will no longer be appropriate and that it will be centerpiece. And in this case, with effect from 1976, the conception changed to Africa as centerpiece. We need to find out why the change in conception. And that will now enable Ambassador Sarki to know the limitations of the argument is bringing to us. First of all, in this case, I agree with Ambassador Sarki that there were some dynamics. He pointed to the issue of decolonization, de-apartheidization, and so on and so forth. Those, all the things that they are all talking about, they fall within the framework of the instruments of foreign policy. When he refers to the nuances, all the nuances, economic diplomacy, foreign policy, concentric circles, beneficial and constructive, concentricism, as propounded by Ambassador Oluyemi Adeniji, as well as citizen diplomacy, these fall essentially a priori within the framework of strategic foreign policy. A foreign policy precisely begins with its definition of a focus. What are you targeting? Ambassador Sarki was right by now referring to the period of Murtala Mohammed. The focus of foreign policy by that time was basically liberation of Africa, black dignity. Don't forget, it was on this basis that we did have in 1977 the FESTAC, Festival of African Arts. So at that level, let me put the case for Ambassador Sarki, meanwhile, aside. We'll come to it. Now, I'm surprised that Professor Adibe, my colleague, can be saying that there is a foreign policy in 2020. The issue now is how do you define foreign policy, first of all? Either you look at it as a decision, a policy as a decision. You look at it as a process. But the basic points there, if you now want to look at the example given by Ambassador Sarki, referring to Professor Bolaji Akinyemi's concert of medium powers, which later became Lagos Forum. What was it for? The focus by that time was that Akinyemi considered that Nigeria needed to be relevant in international politics. But the wherewithal, the means, we were not even a great power, not to talk of being a superpower, being able to project national interest worldwide. But he looked at it to say, what about the medium powers? At least we can still be relevant without having a vibrant economic situation. People argued by that time that you cannot operate effectively, efficiently worldwide if the domestic setting was not good. But he came up with an idea that, look, what if we are able to do this? Have we forgotten that it's the same Bolaji Akinyemi that came up with the idea of a technical aid cost, which is also now a major instrument of Nigeria's foreign policy? So when we are talking about no foreign policy, please, what happened? As at last year, let's look at the example of this year. This George Floyd in America, he was killed very brutally. I only wish that you have read the article by Ambassador, I will remember his name. He wrote an article to say Nigeria did not make any pronouncement. We didn't say anything. You could see a black man. Now, you see a policeman putting his leg, his knee on his neck, now to break his cervical vertebrae. For God's sake, Nigeria kept quiet. Where is the foreign policy? Now, in China, xenophobic attacks, the reactions on daily basis, the foreign minister, Onyama, is most competent, very free willing to say Nigeria is concerned. That's the diplomatic language. We are always concerned about all these reactions. Always concerned. When you look at Article 27, paragraph 1 of the Ghanaian Investment Code, which says that, look, any foreign businesses, any foreigners cannot engage in petty trading and requiring the payment of $300,000 by all of them. Now, what was our reaction? Is the government of Nigeria, the foreign minister, claiming not to know? And for him to have reacted that this one is not consistent with the rules established by the ECOWAS. Now, the reaction, Vienna Convention, for God's sake, the Ghanaians went to the extent, the Ghanaian government went to the extent of allowing private individuals to aggress our diplomatic mission. And now we come to Ambassador Mbunu. She rightly pointed out that, yes, we give much. We are not reaping much. It's not talking about financial gains. Please look at the example. I remember it will be 2008, around that time. Nigeria was seeking the position of a membership of the Security Council. Now, the Gambia, Togo, all these countries, let me tell you the processes here. There's what we call regional candidate. There's what we call African candidate. West Africa is a region. So, and they rotate, these seats amongst African countries. What happened was that Nigeria was adopted as the ECOWAS candidate to be presented at the UN. Now, Nigeria's candidature was tabled for discussion in Addis Ababa. And the African Union endorsed Nigeria's candidature as Africa's candidate. But when they got to the UN, please, it's on record. The UN Secretary General by that time did not know that he was speaking very closely to the microphone. Microphone was there. I had the opportunity of being in the General Assembly by that time. What the UN Secretary General said, he asked himself, was the Gambia, Benin Republic, all these countries also contesting? They are not on the election list. What happened was that they voted for themselves. They didn't vote against Nigeria. They didn't vote for Nigeria. But they disagreed. They protested against Nigeria's candidature in the UN. Now, a foreign policy with a focus, please, we know quite well that a country like the Gambia, that we are funding very well, cannot afford the luxury of going to the UN now to go against us. When the ECOWAS had already adopted Nigeria's candidature, when the African Union had already accepted Nigeria's candidature, I agree with Ambassador Saki that yes, foreign policy is to seek greatness and do all that. But beyond that one, please, rhetorics to be differentiated from the situational reality that is on the ground.
Thank you so much, Professor Bola Akintoye. Kingsley, you wanted to ask a question?
No, that's right. No, Professor Adibe is also itching. Okay. That's we'll pause Professor Akintoye in the meantime. I'll go over to Professor Adibe.
Yes, Professor Adibe, I was looking at Ambassador Usman Sarki talked about greatness, dignity, and image of the country. Is that sort of blinding us to the real matter on the ground where Nigeria is just used and dumped most of the time?
Yeah, I agree largely with Professor Saraki's position. I'll put it differently, though. Sorry, Ambassador. Sorry, Ambassador is bigger than that. I'll put it differently. I'll talk about notion of soft power. That actually what we say, it's the politicians said we got nothing in return. I don't really believe in that. First, the time you do the helping, as we like to put it, your prestige in the international community is also being enhanced. And there is something that comes back to it. And also, I think it's actually very rude to say that whatever you get, you know, the way the Jonathan government put it, that going forward, whatever our foreign policy will be dictated by what we get back in return. Yes, national interest is always drives foreign policy, but you don't go about proclaiming it. Even businesses. Business cannot come to your country and say, I'm coming to set up a business to make profit. No, they will not say something like that. They will tell you, we're coming to set up a business because we notice that there's lack of electricity and this will create jobs. Implicit in that is that there are interests that will be serviced, that you make profit. So, and it's also not actually factually correct that we do not get anything in return. Because in many of the places we helped, quote and unquote, say Liberia, Sierra Leone, South Africa, there is a tendency for us to unleash our human capital in those countries. And the role of Nigerians that flock to those countries that we have helped, quote unquote, in the remittance economy is often not given due credit. So it is not that simple that you say, again, for example, Professor Akinterima was saying about the voting in the United Nations and all this. If through your own soft power, through your own investment in being big brother, so to say, you are not able to leverage it, then it is not failure of foreign policy, it is failure of leadership. And we have to make that distinction between failure of leadership and failure of foreign policy. I don't think our foreign policy has failed, so to say, and we do not need to enunciate any very nice sounding phrases to show that we have foreign policy. But what we have to be very careful about is to assume that you go and stick it to the nose, to the face of others and say, from today, Ambassador Saraki, my relationship with you will be determined by what you get, I get in return. It will be a put-off.
Okay, Professor Adibe, thank you very much. Let's try once again to capture, if you like, the bright spots in our foreign policy exertions. Just before we start talking about, okay, what's playing out in recent years and indeed what the consequences were. Ambassador Mbonu, we were talking about the role that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs staff played, for instance, say in the liberation of South Africa, where South Africa were already an independent country, in ensuring that apartheid collapsed in South Africa. Nigeria played a tremendous role in the independence of Zimbabwe, in the independence of Namibia, in the independence of Angola, and to an extent Mozambique because of the consequences of the Angola independence. Nigeria was also critical to the establishment of ECOWAS. Nigeria was also there when OAU was created in 1963. So, but can we therefore say that Nigeria was always a laggard? Nigeria went ahead to say, look, Africa is, whether we say corner piece or centerpiece of our foreign policy, Nigeria stepped forward, even though some persons might argue, as you were pointing out a while ago, that sometimes we tended to back the wrong horse, as we found in, say, in Angola in the first instance and also in Zimbabwe.
Let me, Professor Akinterima gave an example which apply. I'm a pragmatist in everything I do. I don't believe in this big theory. I believe in whatever you are doing, as a pragmatist. That's who I am. I say it everywhere. Let me give an example because he cited it. He said he listened to the microphone. I was going for an election because we were members of a UN subcommission on human rights. You go there on your personal capacity. I was going with my then permanent secretary. It was a 4-year thing. And then we went there for re-election. Usually, all the other groups will sort themselves out. There are 2 slots, they will pick 2 people. 3 slots, they pick 3. Africa will go with this unwieldy number. 13 came looking for 2 slots. Amongst them, Togo, Benin, Liberia, and Sierra Leone that we just liberated. We fought for Liberia. Ecomog, our people died, we spent money. Then we went for this re-election. Do you know the president, the minister were able to reach the other members, they stepped down. Liberia, I will not forget, it's like yesterday, refused to step down for us. And this was something we were using to fight to dismantle apartheid and to liberate the other colonized countries. It was a tug of war until our president, I think the lady, I think Salif something, the lady president, was called to tell the member to step down. That was how we got in. So what I'm saying in effect is, it's not the problem of these countries really. I will quote from the paper, the lecture given by our dean, Olisemeka. He called it abysmal failure of diplomacy. It's on our part. You don't go there with nothing. For goodness sake, let us sit down. What are we giving to these people? Plan it, execute it, and make sure you put a price tag. That's what America does. Yeah. You dare not poke your hands in the eyes of America if she is helping you. And that's what they do for us. We talk about midterm, we talk about what we are going to get. Oh yes, prestige is there. Yes, we get this greatness, we get this big name. But look at what is happening in South Africa, for goodness sake.
And Ghana.
And Ghana. Can South Africa look at us and remember what we did for them? Even students were giving their money to deliver this, to liberate these people. I burnt candles as a fighting for resolution. And when I look at the killings, the maiming, the burning of the properties, the businesses of Nigerians, you keep wondering. So it's not the fault of these countries. It's the poor, abysmal failure of our diplomacy. That's what I will call it. And we destroyed whatever will have come to us as that goodwill. Because it's a goodwill you need. The greatness and everything, okay, the bigness of the name. But at the end of it all, what are you gaining? That's
Professor
the cross of the
Adibe
matter.
described it as not failure of foreign policy or diplomacy, but leadership.
Well, maybe leadership, because there, again, like I said, foreign affairs work has been outsourced. When you put so many hands in the pie, you spoil the pie. Look at foreign ministry. This one is diaspora. This one is this. They have so many, struggling to do this work. Why can't you allow the experts? So that when we fail, we take the responsibility. I don't even know who is in charge of foreign affairs. I was in a meeting yesterday. We are trying to review foreign ministry. International NIA was there. What do they call them? Diaspora was there. And then Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I stood my ground. I said the people to drive this will be Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The guy there was lost because there were so many hands trying to bake this cake. And that's the problem. So we don't even know who to hold responsible. Leadership, they will call the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Are they even allow the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to even do what they know how to do? I'm an expert. I'm a foreign affairs officer for 35 years. Will you allow us to do it? Everybody is an expert. It's just like sports. Excuse me. You have everybody now commenting on sports, even those who know it. Allow the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, allow the experts that have been trained, let them do this work and take responsibility.
The Super Eagles, they have at least 200 million coaches whenever they're on the field of play. All right, Ambassador Bono, let's pause you in the meantime. Ambassador Usman Sarki.
No, we have to let...
we're supposed to sign off. We're supposed to get Professor Akinteriwa join us briefly before we sign him off. But I wanted Ambassador Sarki to also get this point, if you can be brief, before we go over to Professor Akinteriwa. There is something here. You've articulated some of the issues that we have come across in our foreign policy landscape over 60 years. And you've also talked about some of the activities, some of the exertions. Now, when you say that all of this can be tied to image, greatness, and dignity of the people, and therefore leadership, why is it that in terms of the leadership dividend, at critical moments, Nigeria fails to rally the rest of Africa, either behind a candidate or behind a specific issue or otherwise? I mean, it looks like the leadership that the rest of Africa looks forward to us is subscription dues, donations and gifts and so on and so forth. What's your take on this, Ambassador?
Yeah, thank you very much. You may be right to an extent in terms of the tangible material worth and the demonstration of empathy from the African countries towards Nigeria. But remember that foreign policy is engagement with other actors. And those other actors also have their peculiarities, they have their interests, and they have their inclinations. So presuming that your own interests takes over or is superimposed on the interests of other countries is a wrong premise to begin with. All these countries that we are talking about in Africa, whether it's Liberia or Guinea-Bissau or Angola or South Africa, they are independent sovereign countries. They have aspirations and interests just as we have. So we need to find a middle ground, common ground on which we will operate and understand each other. Here it comes to the operation of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the conduct of diplomacy. And I will agree with Ambassador Mbono that too many actors are involved today in the implementation of Mr. President's foreign policy targets and objectives, thereby having too many cooks in the kitchen. What we need is precision in terms of our engagement, defining our path and enunciating strategies and tactics towards achieving those goals. And you cannot do without the Minister of Foreign Affairs. You may have 10 or 20 other agencies contributing to the formulation of foreign policy, but when it comes to execution, you leave it to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The other weakness in our foreign policy is actually our engagement at the level of capitals of countries where we send ambassadors. In a situation where you pick ambassadors, not from the street, I don't want to say that, but from outside the confines of the diplomatic practice, and you send them to strategic countries. By strategic countries, I mean even African countries. And these people have not been exposed to the practice of diplomacy. So they go there to start having the feel of what diplomacy is. So their advocacy and engagement fall far short of the demands and expectations of Nigeria. And that is where the issue of articulation and disjointing of our objectives and aspirations come. So I think, we need to sit down to take 2 or 3 practical steps. One, we have to understand and agree on what are the core national interests of Nigeria should be. Secondly, what will be the foreign policy objectives of this country should be based on the pursuit of the core national interests. And thirdly, what instruments are we going to now devise and adopt towards the execution and attainment of the foreign policy objectives that should also now lead or dovetail with the core national interests. And here you need a competent, well-knit, well-organized Minister of Foreign Affairs that is adequately resourced, motivated, and driven from the top. And that seems something where deficiencies and improvisations are coming in now, unfortunately. I think, I want to sympathize with Ambassador Mbono on her remonstrances about the situation of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and our diplomacy. And I think, maybe this program may lead to actually some course corrections if the powers that be really, follow the discussions today. So I think, not all is lost. We are on course, but we have to be very precise. We have to be organized and targeted and purposeful. My last word on this is, please let us not take other African countries for granted. They are sovereign, independent, self-respecting countries as we are. We should engage with them on the basis of equality, fraternity, and dignity. We cannot see ourselves as America, where they demand reciprocity on everything. We are not America. We are Africans operating in Africa within traditional African empathy context. Thereby, we cannot be hard-nosed pragmatists like they are.
I was just wondering, Ambassador Sarki, thanks a lot for the
Yeah.
points that you have raised. But let us even take a look, just before we get back to Professor Akintoyewa for his brief comments. Let's even take a look at the concept of Abuja, where we are broadcasting from here in our national headquarters studios. When you look at the concept of Abuja and the key features, for instance, the naming of streets, you have prominent Africans and indeed non-Africans who have street names here in Abuja. You also have, excuse me, African capitals that have street names here in Abuja.
Yes.
In other African countries, where else do you have Nigerian names, including those countries for which Nigeria made sacrifice? I've always cited the example of Zimbabwe.
Guinea-Bissau just...
Of Zimbabwe, I just give you an example. Zimbabwe gained independence in 1980, and we know the role Nigeria played. Nigeria also funded the establishment, the purchase and establishment of the Zimbabwe Mass Media Trust. And you could see what they were using their media for in attacking Nigerians. I wouldn't know now whether there's any street named after any Nigerian in Harare. But go to South Africa. But you have South African names here in Abuja. So what is it, Ambassador Sarki, you are saying reciprocity, we are all Africans. Yes, we are Africans. Yes. So how do you reconcile this? Well, I would have paused that, but I go to Professor Akintoyewa very briefly, since you are still here with us in the studios. Professor Akintoyewa, let's get your closing thoughts on these issues.
So you will live very, very long. Because you see, any foreign policy that is predicated on self-deceit is no foreign policy. Any foreign policy that is the focus, the interest is not known to the people of Nigeria is not a foreign policy. Why you will live long is because, look, you are drawing attention to reality. Now you have asked, when Alaba Ogunsanwo was a high commissioner with a concurrent mandate in those places, he complained that, look, why is it that in all these places we could not have the name of an Nnamdi Azikiwe, a Tafawa Balewa, who announced on October 7 that Nigeria's policy would seek to protect black dignity and all those things. Our name is not there. Please, you see, Buba Marwa, when he was High Commissioner to South Africa, he drew attention of the government of Nigeria to a radio television program, according to which one of the interlocutors on the program said that Nigeria participated in the anti-apartheid struggle for economic motivational purposes, not for altruism. And he advised that there was the need to put on record what Nigeria did in the anti-apartheid struggle. So all these African brothers that we are talking about, they do not recognize, they do not see any goodness in what Nigeria is trying to do. Second point, let me explain Agboola Gambari's foreign policy concentric circles and Olu Adeniji's concept of constructive concentricism. Professor Gambari suggested the idea of foreign policy concentricism in terms of operational areas. He divided the whole world into 4 concentric circles. The innermost circle comprises Nigeria and the immediate neighbors. He included the immediate neighbors considering that the security interests of Nigeria and those of the immediate neighbors are intertwined. So whatever happens in the immediate neighborhood concerns us. West Africa is second circle. Africa is third, then the whole rest of the world. The difference between Agboola Gambari's concentric circles, as distinct from Adeniji's, Adeniji talks about constructive and beneficial consensusism. That is, in each concentric circle, what is Nigeria's national interest?
Akinterewa, please, can you be brief and sign off because we are really running out of time?
Well, let me conclude by saying that, look, if, for instance, we are to have foreign policy in 2020, the issue is not just being American or not. Please, let there be Nigerianness in our foreign policy. And I am proposing that the new trust should be Nigerianocentrism as the foundation of Afrocentrism in Nigeria's foreign policy. And that one we can always explain the contents. If Nigeria can make itself a hub, a pole of attraction for the whole of Africa, everybody will come to Nigeria, and then we will provide leadership by example.
Professor Bola Akinterewa, former Director General, Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, thank you so much for your input on this topic. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
We'll take a break now. When we return, we continue with our conversation.
Hot chocolate 3-in-1, a delicious combination of rich cocoa and wholesome goodness of milk. Just add hot water to get an instant chocolatey treat. Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1. Just add hot water.
Candidates who applied for admission into Ahmadu Bello University NTA TV College degree program in mass communication for 2020-2021 academic session are invited to a post-UTME and direct entry screening exercise scheduled as follows. Date: 15th to 17th October 2020. Venue: NTA TV College premises, Rayfield, Jos. Time: 9 a.m. daily. Screening fee: 2,000 naira, paid through the remitter platform in any commercial bank in favor of NTA TV College, Jos. Eligible candidates are those who indicated NTA TV College as their first choice and scored 180 and above in the 2020 UTME examination. Candidates are expected to come along with the originals of their O-level certificates, JAMB slips, birth certificates, indigenship certificate and proof of payment. Direct entry candidates are expected to come along with their original diploma certificates, A-level results in addition to the other credentials mentioned above. Shortlisted candidates without O-level results will not be cleared by JAMB. Therefore, all candidates are advised to visit any JAMB office or accredited CBT center nearest to them to upload their O-level results. Wearing a face mask is compulsory for admittance into the college premises, in addition to strict observance of other COVID-19 safety protocols. Announcer, Registrar.
Afro Culture presents First Nigerian Entertainment and Economic Roundtable, Lagos 2020.
Theme: positioning the entertainment and creative industry to lead private sector role in supporting federal and state governments' efforts at achieving urgent economic diversification.
The roundtable is supported by Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Federal Ministry of Information and Culture, the Nigerian Television Authority, and Lagos State Government.
For sponsorship and inquiries, call 0908-501-0000.
Nigerian Entertainment and Economic Roundtable.
Mainstreaming the entertainment and creative industry into the nation's economy. A new edition of TV Guide is out, featuring great personalities from all walks of life. Expository interview with a young TV presenter who shows passion on what she does, Morayo Afolabi Brown of TVC. Pick a copy of this compendium of mind-blowing stories and get abreast with issues as regards media convergence, leadership, health, star profiles, star programs, fashion, sports, human angle stories, and lots more. Meet some media professionals within our space who have paid their dues in no small ways. TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
All right, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service. Just to indicate, of course, that this is otherwise a very broad subject matter, and today is our first time of touching on it. You can't, of course, be discussing foreign policy issues without looking at a parallel, which is the domestic affairs. So it's foreign policy in our 60-year history. It's as significant, of course, as some of the experiences that we've had on the domestic scene. We're, of course, going to have to return to this subject matter, Jumai.
Yes.
So in the interim, let's get the closing thoughts of our guests. And at some point when we return to the subject matter, we'll now drill into the nitty-gritty, including part of what Ambassador Bono has indicated, amplified by Ambassador Sariki, that we are not effectively, even not fully, utilizing human capital in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Professor Adibe, let's get your closing thoughts on this. In 60 years, Nigeria kicked off, circumstances have changed, but in those 60 years, have we reaped fully the benefits? Not forgetting, for instance, some of our nasty experiences. I'm sorry, I use that word advisedly. Unpleasant experiences, even as a country. When we were at war, Cote d'Ivoire and Zambia were not on our side as a united country, were they?
No, they were not. Let me just, as a closing remark, point out that your respectability in international relations is not dependent on your past benevolence. It is a function of the leverages you can bring at the table at any point in time. So, and the moment you lose your ability to bring leverages and start harping on what you did in the past, it actually annoys people because you're playing on entitlement. So we have to be asking the right questions. If we are not being respected for our roles in the past, why? And then that also brings to mind the very important point you made about the role of our domestic politics. Our domestic environment, the elite consensus, the nature of your economy, how are they today? As opposed to the time we felt we had dynamic foreign policy, you cannot divorce the two. If there is a highly fractionalized domestic elite, people will lose respect for you internationally. So the moment we want a dynamic foreign policy, it is umbilically tied to what is happening in our domestic environment.
Ambassador Sarki.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I want to just stress that foreign policy and conduct of diplomacy are inherently conservative in nature. No matter how radical you are, when you go out there, you are restrained by certain principles, certain experiences, and actually, certain realities. Therefore, your advocacy should not be that of like an activist when you discuss foreign policy. You have to anchor it on the realities that is confronting you. I want to just point out that in Windhoek, the capital of Namibia, the most important street or road or avenue was named after General Murtala Mohammed. Our High Commission is located there, and I understand, I haven't been to that country, but I understand that the main offices of government are all situated on that road. So it was named deliberately after General Murtala Mohammed. Yesterday...
SWAPO and former President Sam Nujoma are a different kettle of fish.
Yeah, quite. And also, I think, recently in Guinea-Bissau, they named an avenue after President Muhammadu Buhari. So these are... You don't go as a foreign minister, like I can't imagine Ambassador, His Excellency Geoffrey Onyama, going to a capital in Zimbabwe somewhere and say, why didn't you name a street after us? I mean, you cannot allow your dignity to descend to that level. So I think I want us to be very cautious when we're making demands on our foreign policy.
Well, all right, Ambassador Sariki, thanks a lot. It wasn't a question of making demands; it was just a question of reciprocity. If in Abuja here you've named streets after capitals and personages, it's just a point of curiosity. Nigerians would ask, "Oh, why not?" Let me also cite this example before I bring in Ambassador Bono. I understand we don't have enough time. Nelson Mandela in 1994, just before the first non-racial elections, acknowledged to us Nigerian journalists in Johannesburg the role that Nigeria played. It met Tafawa Balewa, who was still Prime Minister in 1962 or so, and the amount that Tafawa Balewa gave to the liberation struggle when, of course, Nelson Mandela returned and then got arrested and then the revolting trials and he went into jail. But where is the acknowledgement of the role of Tafawa Balewa in the liberation struggle in South Africa? Ambassador Bono, we understand that we are pressed for time. You've made
Briefly.
your point. Sorry, we will not be able to take your closing thoughts. That's what our director is telling us. We'll have you on some other time. Ambassador Christine Bono, former Nigerian ambassador and permanent representative of Africa, South America Cooperation in Caracas, Venezuela. Jide Ofo Adebe, Professor of International Relations and Post Science, Nasarawa State University, Kefi. Ambassador Usman Sariki, Directing Staff currently at NIPS, and former Deputy PAM Rep of Nigeria to United Nations in New York. Thank you very much. All right, so we're taking a short break now. We are having a second topic to discuss. This is still with Nigeria at 60. Of course, Nigeria at 60, we have a range of activities coming up for that particular event. And a big company, that's Coca-Cola, is also involved in this. In pursuit of its commitment to unite and uplift Nigerians, Coca-Cola is introducing Niger like never before, and it's said to be a refreshing initiative to celebrate Nigeria's 60th independence anniversary in grand style. So ahead of the Independence Day, Coca-Cola is calling on Nigerians to join you and other renowned music performers like Yemi Alade, Rema, and Tubaba in setting a world record for the largest number of people singing the national anthem at the same time. So the Niger Like Never Before initiative is an ode to the generous heart, extraordinary energy, and buoyant spirit of Nigerians, highlighting the unifying factor that music has on our people. And Coca-Cola is encouraging Nigerians to look beyond the desire to go back to the normal. So we have our guests who will be joining us to discuss this via Zoom from Lagos. Yusuf Murtala is a representative of Coca-Cola. I want to know if the other guest is also there. All right, Yusuf Murtala, Coca-Cola rep, thank you very much for being with us on this occasion. We have already indicated what Niger Like Never Before would be like. That's to say, getting the largest number of persons to sing simultaneously the national anthem. But tell us, why is Coca-Cola getting involved in this?
Thank you very much, and good morning, viewers at home. My name is Yusuf Murtala from Coca-Cola. So just to give us a bit of introduction, as you know, Coca-Cola, we had a campaign called Open Like Never Before. So Niger Like Never Before is a continuation of that campaign, where we are celebrating our 60th anniversary and independence of our country, right? We feel that it is a good time to leverage the unifying power of music to drive this. And also, as most people know, that Coca-Cola is about uplifting and uniting Nigerians. So we think there's no better time, right, than to celebrate our country, leveraging music. And then for that, we're going to have Cobams produce a song. There will be Two-Face, there will be Yemi Alade, and then, of course, we've got Rema. So for us, it's about leveraging all these artists and then coming together to create a virtual concert, right, to sing and appreciate our country as one.
Where is the concert scheduled? When is it scheduled to hold, and where and what time?
Oh, it is scheduled to hold on 1st of October. That's on Thursday by 10:30 a.m. is a virtual concert. It will definitely happen on Coca-Cola Nigeria YouTube channel. So we're inviting everyone. Set up alarm. Tell your friends to tell a friend to tell a friend, right? And invite everybody to come sing and appreciate our country like never before.
As we celebrate 60 years of Nigeria's independence, what do you hope to see at the end of this initiative? Something that has never happened before in Nigeria.
Oh, thank you very much. So for us is that post this, we feel Nigerians will be more united. Nigerians will feel uplifted. Nigerians will rededicate themselves to the service of our nation, right? And then we'll continue to unite and celebrate our unity and diversity.
Well, Yusuf, will there be any loss in terms of the vibrant energy you normally would get from a live concert, people to people? But of course, we understand that coronavirus is still around, and therefore there is need for social distancing. How then might those who are participating virtually feel the vibe, feel the energy arising from the concert that you are planning?
Thank you very much. So that is why we've decided, one, to go with the best of the best Nigerian artists, to also go with the arguably the biggest producer in Africa, who is Cobams, is the one putting this together. So from a technical, a content point of view, we've satisfied that aspect to make sure that it is the best. The second point is that even from a technology point of view, what we've tried to do is to make sure that even when it is virtual, right, you get to have a feel like it's happening live. So we've decided to invest in technology to make it very solid. Our backbone, the provider of our internet services, and then even the YouTube link is very strong, and then we don't see any crash. So for us is that we spared no expenses to make it the best.
I was just wondering, Yusuf, let's give us a walkthrough again. At what time is the concert starting, and who are the big names that you're expecting, and what is supposed to be the role of each of these big names?
So the concert is going to start at 10:30. I think I've got Cobams on the call now as well. It's going to start at 10:30 on 1st of October, this Thursday. We're going to start with the national anthem sing-off. There will also be performances by these artists, and there will be Yemi Alade performing, Rema will be performing, and then, of course, one of our musical legends in Nigeria, Tubaba, will also be performing. And all of this is put together by Cobams. Cobams, do you want to share some insights?
Absolutely. If I want to participate in the Nigeria like before, how do I link up with you? If I would like me, if I want to participate in the like Nigeria never before, the national anthem, what is the link I should use to connect with you?
Oh, so basically just go to www.youtube.com and then you search for Coca-Cola Nigeria, and then boom, you're on our YouTube channel. That's all.
I just wondered, Yusuf, you were trying to bring on Cobams a while ago. Do you have him online now?
Yes, Cobams is online.
All right, Cobam, could you flip? Cobams. We are seeing Cobam. I don't know. You look upside down, so
sideways
or sideways rather, not upside down. If we can, if you could flip that.
Can you flip it?
If you could flip it anti-clockwise, just once, and then we'll see you more clearly.
I'm not sure why that is so.
All right, we don't know why it is so, but okay. So let's hear you.
All right, so I'm definitely excited to be a part of this project. I'm just, like the name connotes, it's Niger like never before. We've never turned 60. I think it's a very, very important marker in our history as a nation. It's a coming of age of sorts. And it's very exciting that, Coca-Cola is celebrating it with something that is also making history in a sense. We've never had so many number of, Nigerians coming together to sing the national anthem at the same time, obviously being led by, some of the biggest stars of our time. And for me, it's a singular honor to actually be involved in putting this together. So, like Yusuf has rightly said, it is celebrating unity and diversity. It is putting Nigeria on the map, on the world map in a different way. It's using music, which is a very important part of our culture, our way of life, to just show people how united we are as a people. And for me, that's super exciting, and I'm super excited to be a part of it. So it's 10:30 a.m., 1st of October, on the Coca-Cola Nigeria YouTube channel, and I expect everyone who come in. Hopefully, I won't be looking upside down on that project. So I'm really excited about it.
Okay, Cobams, it's quite an honor to have you on the program. What kind of message will you be sending to Nigeria through that initiative?
I think it's very straightforward. I think it's unity and diversity. Like I said, I think it's the fact that though our tribe and our tongue may differ, we are one and the same. We're a great nation, made of people from different divides, who, have come together to celebrate, this thing that brings us together, this entity called Nigeria, and, we're united through music, united through sports, united through, our common goal of just creating, a better nation. And I'm just happy that, this is sort of, we're not letting the 1st of October go uncelebrated in a unique way. I know that there'll be many ways that it will be celebrated, but this is one particularly unique way. So I think we're sending a message of, the uniqueness of, us as a people. We're sending a message of being open, which is what, Nigerians need at this point in time. We need to be accepting and open, to one another, accepting of one another, even as we continue to social and physical distance. And so, it's also the message, that echoes from the words of our national anthem, that we have people who have labored for us and their labor cannot be in vain, and that we owe it to ourselves to serve this nation with heart and might. And so it's just re-echoing, the strength and the power and the character and the words of the national anthem. And what better way to do it than through a single such as this and the concert that will follow afterwards.
All right, Kobam Sasukwo, thank you very much. Yusuf Murtala, let's come back to you to elaborate more on this just before we wrap up. Coca-Cola, of course, is hosting the Niger Like Never Before program to celebrate Nigeria at 60, and that will be on the 1st of October, 1st of October, which is just a couple of days hence. How long do you intend the event to last? Starting from 10:30. We know that Coca-Cola often is generous in terms of prizes and gifts. So what should those who participate in this expect? We do have virtual gifts and all that as well.
Thank you very much. So first of all, it's going to be 3 hours. So if we start by 10:30, we'll be looking to round off by, let's say, 12:30 or 1 p.m. or latest. Outside the national anthem sing-off, the rendition of the national anthem, there will also be performances by these 3 lovely artists, Two-Face, Tubaba, Rema, and Yemi Alade. Thank you. If there will be gifts, we've also got plans to do virtual giveaways after the campaign by also encouraging consumers to go to our social media pages to create their own rendition of the national anthem. And as such, we would definitely be giving gifts and awards for that part of the rendition. But that would come after the concert itself on Thursday.
Okay, Yusuf Murtala, Coca-Cola representative, thank you so much for coming on the program. Kobams Asuko, singer, musician, and music producer extraordinary. It's a pleasure to have had you on the program. And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Join us again tomorrow for another edition. I am Jummai Yusuf.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. Stay safe and be well. See you tomorrow.